I could tell by the way the wind moved that the sea was angry again. It has always been my barometer for truth. When the air turns sharp and metallic, something bad is about to happen. Today, that feeling lingered in my chest as I lay in bed, the smell of medicine thick in the air, the crash of waves pulsing like a slow heartbeat through the open window. They said I was getting worse. I didn't need a doctor to tell me that. My body has become a map of betrayals. The hands that once built this house now tremble when I lift a glass. The voice that commanded ships and men now comes out as a whisper. But my mind still remembers everything, especially the sound of footsteps approaching the front porch. Claire was the first to arrive. I recognized her step even before I heard her voice. Sharp, confident, a rhythm that once challenged me in every argument we ever had. When she walked into the room, it was like watching a storm roll in, beautiful, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. She tried to smile, but the corners of her mouth betrayed a different emotion. Fear, maybe. Or regret. "Claire," I said. My voice cracked like dry wood. "You came home." Of course I did. She sat by my bed and took my hand, that soft, deliberate touch she used to give her mother when she thought I wasn't watching. "You didn't think I'd stay away, did you?" I wanted to tell her that part of me did, that I'd half expected her pride to win again. But I just nodded, feeling the weight of her fingers against mine, warm and real. It struck me how long it had been since we'd touched like that, without pretense, without an audience. Lucas came next. My only son. The one who inherited my confidence and turned it into charm. He entered the room with that same polished calm he's carried since he was a boy, the kind that hides everything. He kissed my forehead like a dutiful son, then adjusted the pillows, checked the medicine bottles, and whispered something to Sophie in the hallway. Always managing, always in control. And then there was Sophie, my youngest, still soft where the others had hardened. She came in quietly, her hair tied back, her eyes red from crying. She didn't speak much, just fussed with the blanket, smoothing the edges, pretending to be busy. I could feel her pulse of worry. She never could hide her emotions. They looked like strangers playing a family. Even their warmth felt rehearsed. The doctor had come that morning. Said I might have a few months left, maybe less. I could see how the news had tightened them, how it made them polite. It's strange how death can make people careful, with their words, with their glances. No one wants to seem greedy too soon. As the sun went down, I could hear them talking in the kitchen. The walls of this house are thin, they always have been. I built it that way, on purpose, so I could hear my children running, laughing, fighting. Now all that carries through the halls is strategy. Claire's voice first, calm but suspicious. "He doesn't seem as bad as you said." Lucas answered, low and smooth. "That's the medicine working. I've got the doses under control." I heard the clink of glass, the rustle of paper. Then Sophie, uncertain. "You mean you're changing them?" Lucas's reply was quick. "I'm adjusting them. It's better this way for everyone." A silence followed. Then Sophie whispered something I couldn't catch, her voice trembling. I closed my eyes. So, the poison of inheritance had already begun its work. I had known it would. Money has always been the real sickness in this house. They think I don't see it. The calculation in Lucas's gaze, the guilt in Sophie's, the guarded suspicion behind Claire's composure. But I see everything. I always have. Later, Claire came to sit with me again. The night air had turned cold, the curtains breathing in and out with the sea. She smelled faintly of rain and the perfume her mother used to wear. I felt her brush my forehead with a damp cloth, her touch careful, distant. "You should sleep," she said. "I can't," I murmured. "The ocean's too loud." "It's the same ocean as always." "No," I said quietly. "It's different. It sounds like it's waiting." She didn't answer. She just sat there, watching me, her face half in shadow. For a moment, I saw her mother in her. The same steady eyes, the same stubborn tenderness. I almost told her everything then. About the will, about the foundation, about the test I had set in motion. But I kept silent. Let them show me who they really are first. After she left, I lay awake, listening to the house breathe. The smell of salt and medicine hung thick in the dark. Somewhere down the hall, I heard Sophie crying, and Lucas's voice soothing her, soft, dangerous, familiar. A family reunited by love, or by the scent of inheritance. Time would tell. Outside, the ocean whispered against the rocks, patient as ever. It has seen this all before. Men clinging to life, families circling what's left of them. I closed my eyes, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I felt my wife's hand in mine again, pulling me toward the light. But no, not yet. I still had a part to play. The doctor came in the morning. He smelled faintly of soap and the sea, that clean, indifferent scent that has nothing to do with compassion. His shoes left damp prints on the tile as he walked to my bedside. "Mr. Maddox," he said, voice polite, professional, practiced. "We've reviewed everything. I'm afraid the cancer has advanced. 2 months, maybe less." The words didn't sting. I'd known this storm was coming. What interested me more was the silence that followed. 3 children standing around my bed, each reacting in their own way. Sophie's eyes filled instantly, tears trembling on her lashes. Lucas nodded slowly, his face a mask of control. Claire's expression barely changed, but her hands clenched at her sides. She was always the one who needed to act, to fix, to fight. 2 months. That was how long I had to see who they really were. When the doctor left, the house seemed to hold its breath. I watched my children avoid each other's eyes. The sea wind rattled the shutters like nervous fingers. It was Claire who finally broke the silence. "Then we'll take care of him together," she said. No arguments. Lucas gave a small smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Of course. We'll take turns. It's the least we can do." Sophie looked from one to the other, as if waiting for permission to speak. "I can cook, clean, make sure everything's in order." "Perfect," Lucas said smoothly. "I'll handle the medication." That made Claire's gaze sharpen. I could see the old rivalry flare in her eyes. Lucas noticed it too, and his smile deepened just slightly, as though he enjoyed her suspicion. I stayed quiet, pretending to be weaker than I was. Let them build their stage, play their parts. The truth always leaks out eventually, especially in families. After lunch, the day unfolded in that strange, uneasy calm that comes after bad news. Sophie busied herself in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with unnecessary force. The smell of onions and garlic drifted down the hall. Claire sat by the window with her laptop, pretending to read emails. Lucas came and went from my room, measuring out pills, marking doses, humming tunelessly under his breath. Each time, he spoke in that soft, persuasive tone people use when they've already decided what's best for you. "How are you feeling, Dad?" he asked later that afternoon. "Like a man who knows when the tide is turning." He chuckled. "Don't talk like that. You've still got time." "Yes," I said, "but not as much as you think." His hand paused over the glass of water, then continued as if nothing had happened. He didn't like it when I reminded him that I still saw more than I let on. That was the thing about Lucas. He preferred his games played in the dark. When night fell, Sophie brought me soup. She sat at the edge of the bed, her eyes soft and tired. "I hate seeing you like this," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but I'm lucky. Not everyone gets to die surrounded by family." "Don't say that." I smiled faintly. "Then tell me something else." "Anything." She hesitated. "Lucas and Claire, they've been tense since you got sick. I think she blames him for something. She won't say what." I reached for her hand. "They've always fought. Some people love through arguments." "Do you believe that?" "No," I said quietly, "but it helps them pretend." Later, I drifted in and out of sleep. The sound of the ocean mixed with the low murmur of voices, Lucas and Claire in the hallway. The words were hushed, but the tone was sharp. "You don't get to make the decisions," Claire said. "I'm not making them," Lucas replied. "I'm following the doctor's orders. You always did like control. And you always liked taking it away." There was a pause, long and heavy, before I heard Claire walk away. The floor creaked under her footsteps, the door to her room shutting with quiet finality. Lucas lingered in the hall for a moment longer, then exhaled slowly, a sound halfway between exhaustion and satisfaction. The next morning, the ocean was calm again. Sophie served breakfast on the porch, sunlight flickering through the curtains. The three of them sat together, trying to act normal. For a moment, it almost worked. Claire buttered toast, Lucas poured coffee, Sophie smiled weakly. To an outsider, we might have looked like a family rediscovering each other. But I could feel the tension moving under their words like a current beneath still water. So, Lucas said, stirring his coffee, I've arranged the medication schedule. Everything's labeled. Good, Claire said flatly. I'll double-check it later. He smiled. You don't trust me? I don't trust anyone who uses that tone. Sophie sighed. Please stop. Dad can't hear you. I pretended not to, watching the sunlight glint off the waves. I used to think the ocean sounded like freedom. Now it sounded like memory. Relentless, repetitive, impossible to silence. That afternoon, I asked Claire to walk with me. My legs barely obeyed, but I wanted to feel the wind. She guided me along the terrace, her hand firm at my elbow. You shouldn't be up, she said. I need to see the water, I told her. It reminds me I'm still here. We stood there for a long time. The salt air burned my throat, but I didn't care. You don't trust your brother, I said finally. She stiffened. Did Sophie tell you that? No. You did just now. She sighed, looking out at the waves. He's different, Dad. Too calm. Too in control. He's not doing this for you. And you are. She met my eyes then, defiant, proud, exactly like her mother. I don't know what I am, but I'm not pretending. That at least was true. And it was enough for now. As the day ended, I felt a strange peace settle over me. Fragile, uncertain, like glass on the verge of breaking. The children believed they were managing me, arranging my days, keeping me alive. But the truth was simpler. I was watching them, measuring what was left of their souls before the sea took me for good. I smiled to myself as the light faded. The real storm hadn't even begun. Morning came with the color of rusted silver, the kind of light that makes everything look older than it is. I woke to the sound of gulls screaming above the cliffs and the slow rhythm of waves beneath my window. The air smelled of salt, coffee, and the faint bitterness of medicine. Sophie was the first face I saw. She came in quietly, carrying a tray, porridge, toast, a small glass of orange juice, and the familiar row of pills. Lucas said you should take these before you eat, she murmured. I glanced at the tablets. Pale blue, white, one that looked almost green in the light. He's been keeping track. She nodded. He's very careful. He says precision matters. Yes, I said softly. He would say that. I took the pills with a sip of juice. The liquid burned slightly as it went down, leaving a strange metallic aftertaste. When Sophie left, I spat discreetly into a handkerchief, the taste of bitterness still on my tongue. Something was wrong. Not dangerous yet, but wrong. I'd spent most of my life studying people, reading them like tide charts. The same instinct that helped me build this house, raise my family, and keep my business alive told me that Lucas's attention was not entirely filial. He was managing me, yes, but also monitoring, adjusting, testing. I could feel it in the rhythm of his visits, in the way he held the glass just long enough to make sure I swallowed. By the time Claire came in, the taste had turned to nausea. You look pale, she said, pulling a chair closer. Did you sleep? I drifted, I said, like old wood on the tide. She smiled faintly, but her eyes were sharp. Lucas said you're responding well to the new dosage. I met her gaze. Lucas says a lot of things. Her brow furrowed. You don't trust him? Do you? She hesitated, just long enough to answer me, without words. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the slow breathing of the sea. Then I said, you always had a good sense for danger. I hope you haven't lost it. Her fingers tightened on the armrest. What are you saying? Nothing, I murmured. Just an old man talking. But later that night, I heard her moving through the hallway. Light steps, cautious. She stopped outside Lucas's room. The door was closed, but their voices carried through the crack at the bottom. You're overstepping, she said. I'm keeping him comfortable, Lucas replied. His tone was calm persuasive, the same one he used to talk investors out of their money. You know what the doctor said. That doesn't mean you get to play chemist. It's better this way for everyone. I lay in bed, eyes open, letting the words sink in. Better this way for everyone. It's the kind of phrase that sounds moral until you strip it bare. Then all that's left is calculation. In the morning, Sophie avoided my eyes. She moved quickly, folding napkins, wiping surfaces that were already clean. You should eat, Dad, she said. I will. She lingered. You and Lucas, you trust him, don't you? I smiled faintly. A father should trust his son. But I'm not sure Lucas still believes in fathers. Her face fell, and for a moment I regretted saying it. Sophie has always been the tender one, the kind who feels guilt even for sins she hasn't committed. That afternoon, I called Lucas in. He came with his usual grace, sleeves rolled up, the hint of charm he always wore like armor. What is it, Dad? Need something adjusted? Yes, I said. The truth. He laughed softly. I thought you'd forgotten how to ask for that. I never forget. He leaned against the window frame, watching the ocean. You're suspicious of me. Claire, too. You both think I'm after something. Aren't you? He turned then, his face calm, eyes cold. You built this family on control. Every rule, every word, every breath had to go through you. Now you can't stand that I'm the one in charge. You're not in charge, I said quietly. You're just holding the leash until it burns your hand. He smiled. You really think I'd hurt you? I think you'd convince yourself it was mercy. Something flickered in his eyes then, a shadow, a flash of anger quickly hidden. Rest, Dad, he said, voice low. You need strength. When he left, I sat there, trembling, not from fear, but from the cold certainty of understanding. Lucas wasn't evil. He was pragmatic. The kind of man who believes in clean endings, who can call a slow death a kindness, if it serves the greater good. That night, Claire came back to my room. She thought I was asleep. I felt her hand brush my forehead, then linger near the pills on the nightstand. She lifted one, sniffed it, and I could almost hear her thoughts forming, suspicion hardening into certainty. Outside, the ocean growled against the rocks. The house seemed to shrink around us, the air thick with salt and lies. When she finally left, I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. So, it had begun, the quiet war between them. One fueled by care, one by ambition, both by love twisted into something desperate. The bitter taste in my mouth had nothing to do with the medicine anymore. It was the flavor of family, sharp, familiar, and impossible to swallow. By the end of that week, the ocean house had turned into a stage. Every glance, every gesture, every carefully chosen word felt rehearsed. Even the walls seemed to listen. The sound of the sea no longer soothed me. It only marked time, counting down the days until everything collapsed. Lucas was the director of this quiet play. He controlled the rhythm of my medication, timed my meals, and smiled for visitors with the ease of a man born to deceive. Sophie played her part as the dutiful daughter, fluttering between compassion and fear, while Claire, Claire, was the only one who refused to stay in character. Her eyes followed every movement, every bottle, every whispered exchange. She was no longer hiding her suspicion. That morning, she stood by the window, arms crossed, watching Lucas pour my pills into his palm. You enjoy this, don't you, she said. Enjoy what? Being in charge. Playing savior. Lucas's mouth curved into a practiced smile. I'm doing what's necessary. Necessary for who? He met her eyes, the air between them tightening. For all of us, he said softly, and left the room before she could answer. I watched her shoulders tense. She didn't realize I was awake. The sun fell across her face, and for a moment she looked so much like her mother it hurt. That same fierce loyalty mixed with pride, the kind that could save a family or destroy it. The doctor came later, bringing the smell of rain and antiseptic. He spoke to Lucas in the hall, his voice low, professional. I caught fragments, stable dosage, gradual decline. When they entered, Claire stayed close, pretending to tidy the table, but her eyes were sharp as glass. Mr. Maddox, the doctor said, you're holding steady. That's good. I've always been steady, I replied. He smiled politely. We'll continue the current treatment. Lucas nodded, quick to agree. Exactly what I thought. When the doctor left, Claire lingered by the door. You speak for him now? I speak for the plan, Lucas said. Her laugh was short, bitter. Since when did you care about plans that didn't have a profit margin? He didn't rise to it, but the muscle in his jaw twitched. I could tell. Something was unraveling between them. That evening, the performance reached its peak. A local journalist arrived, a young woman with bright eyes and a voice full of sympathy. She was writing a feature on my charity work, something I'd agreed to months ago, before I knew how sick I was. Lucas insisted the interview go on. It'll lift your spirits, he said, straightening my collar like a child dressing his father. The living room had been cleaned, candles lit, every trace of medicine hidden. Sophie arranged flowers by the window, the sea glowing behind her in the fading light. Claire poured tea, her movements slow and deliberate. The journalist smiled kindly as she set up her recorder. Mr. Maddox, you've dedicated much of your later years to philanthropy. What inspired that? I looked at her, then at my children. Loss, I said simply, and the chance to make it mean something. Lucas leaned forward, charming as ever. Our father believes in second chances, he said. Yes, I replied, watching him closely. A second chance for those who deserve it. The interviewer didn't catch the edge in my tone, but Claire did. Her eyes flicked toward me, then to Lucas, a silent exchange sharp enough to cut glass. As the questions went on, I felt the fatigue settle deep in my bones. The journalist asked about the foundation, the orphanage project, the plans for after I was gone. I answered what I could without revealing too much. The truth was still a secret, for now. When the interview ended, the journalist thanked us and stepped out into the cold evening air. The instant the door closed, the family facade crumbled. Lucas poured himself a drink. Well, he said, raising the glass, we survived that circus. You enjoyed it, Claire said. I enjoy doing what needs to be done. Someone has to protect the family name. Protect, she echoed. That's what you call it. Sophie stood between them, her voice trembling. Please stop. He's tired. They fell silent, but the air was thick with unspoken words. Lucas looked at Claire for a long moment, something hard, almost pleading in his eyes, then left the room. When it was just Sophie and me, she knelt beside my chair. Why do we keep fighting? She whispered. We're supposed to be helping you. People fight, I said, resting a hand on her shoulder, especially when they want to believe they're right. She started to cry quietly, her tears warm against my hand. I wanted to tell her that love doesn't vanish. It just hides behind survival. But I couldn't find the strength. After she went to bed, I sat alone, listening to the sea beat against the cliffs. The house was dark except for the lamp in my study. I wheeled myself inside, the air heavy with the scent of dust and old wood. The desk was still cluttered with papers, letters, unfinished thoughts. I opened the drawer and found what I'd almost forgotten. The draft of a letter to my lawyer, written weeks ago. The ink had dried, but the words still burned. To my children, I leave the house and its memories. The rest shall go to the foundation. I stared at it for a long time, the candlelight trembling across the page. I had meant to finish it, to make it official, but perhaps leaving it unfinished was its own kind of test. Because if love can't survive without inheritance, then it isn't love at all. Outside, the ocean roared in the dark, and the house seemed to shudder with it, walls, windows, and all our false tenderness barely holding together. The storm began before dawn, and with it came the ache in my bones that no medicine could dull. Wind lashed the shutters, rain clawed at the glass, and somewhere in the distance, the sea roared like something wounded. I lay awake, listening to the house creak and shift. It sounded alive, angry, restless, full of old ghosts. I knew the letter would be found eventually. I had left it in the drawer on purpose, half finished, unsigned. Not out of carelessness, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see which of them would go looking first. By mid-morning, the air was heavy with tension. Lucas moved through the rooms like a shadow, carrying his authority in silence. Claire avoided him, her expression carved in ice. Sophie tried to hold the house together with small kindnesses, tea, warmth, gentle words, but it was like patching a cracked hull with paper. When she brought me breakfast, I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "You should rest," she said. "I've been resting my whole life," I replied. "It's overrated." She smiled faintly. "You used to say that about love." Love, rest, both require surrender. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't answer. When she left, I heard Claire in the hallway. Her voice was hushed, tight with suspicion. "Lucas, I need to talk to you." "About what?" "The pills. And Dad's letter." My breath caught. So she'd found it. "What letter?" Lucas asked, his tone quick, too controlled. "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "In his study. He wrote to a lawyer about changing the will." Silence stretched. Then Lucas exhaled. "So that's what this is about. Money. It's about honesty," she shot back. I closed my eyes. The sound of their words cut sharper than the storm outside. Lucas's voice dropped low. "If you think he's giving it all away, you're wrong. He'd never leave us with nothing." "You're sure about that?" "I know him better than you do." That was the line that broke something in me. Because he didn't. Not really. Lucas understood the man I had been, the one who built empires, made deals, controlled every variable. But he never saw the man who watched his wife die, who realized too late that power doesn't outlast love. Claire had seen that version of me. That's why I trusted her more, even when I shouldn't. When they left the hall, I forced myself to sit up, every muscle protesting. The letter still lay where I had left it, half buried under old papers. I pulled it out, the ink faded but legible. To my attorney, Richard Hale. I wished to establish a charitable foundation in my late wife's name. The majority of my estate, I stopped reading. The words were familiar, but they carried a weight I hadn't anticipated when I first wrote them. The foundation wasn't about punishment. It was about cleansing. I wanted something pure to rise from the rot of ambition. But I also knew how betrayal felt, and a part of me needed to know if my children were capable of the same. When Sophie entered later, her eyes darted toward the desk. "You shouldn't overexert yourself," she said. I smiled. "You sound like Lucas." She hesitated. "Claire told me about the letter." "Of course she did. She's worried," Sophie continued softly. "She thinks Lucas knows more than he admits." "Maybe she's right." "Dad," she said, her voice breaking, "why won't you just tell them what you're planning? This secrecy is killing us." "Secrecy," I murmured. "Or truth?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me, eyes full of confusion and pity. When she left, I realized I'd pushed her away too. But perhaps that was necessary. Guilt can be more revealing than confession. That evening, the storm broke. Lightning flashed over the cliffs, thunder rolled through the halls, and with it came the sound of footsteps. Hurried, angry. Claire burst into my room, her hair damp from rain, eyes blazing. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. "Tell you what?" "About the foundation. About the will. You were going to leave us with nothing but this house." Her voice cracked on the last word. She wasn't angry about the money. Not really. She was angry about being excluded, about being left out of my final design. I held her gaze. "Not nothing, Claire. A home. A memory. The rest goes to those who never had one." She stared at me, trembling. "You think that makes it noble? I think it makes it fair." Her shoulders slumped. "Lucas overheard me," she whispered. "He knows." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sea crashed against the rocks as if it, too, had opinions. "Then the game begins," I said quietly. "This isn't a game. It always has been." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "If anything happens to you, I'll know who's responsible." Her voice shook with fury, but beneath it I heard something else. Fear. The kind that comes when love and suspicion finally become indistinguishable. After she was gone, I sat in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the glass. My reflection stared back at me from the window, old, tired, uncertain. Maybe I had gone too far. Maybe this test would destroy what little remained. But it was too late now. Secrets, once spoken, can't be recalled. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Lucas's laughter, low, controlled, and full of intent. And I understood then. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one I had unleashed inside this house. The next morning began in uneasy silence. Even the ocean seemed hesitant, its waves dull and sluggish, as though it too was waiting for something terrible to happen. I could feel the storm still inside the walls, not the one that rattled windows, but the one that brewed behind closed doors, in whispers and glances. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face, anger and grief tangled together, and Lucas standing in the doorway, behind her, listening, pretending he hadn't heard everything. The house was no longer mine. It had turned into a battlefield disguised as a home. When Sophie brought my breakfast, her hands trembled slightly. Claire and Lucas were arguing again, she said. He told her to mind her own business. And did she? She shook her head. You know Claire. She never stops. I managed a tired smile. She got that from her mother. She's afraid for you. So am I said quietly. Just not for the same reasons. The pills sat on the tray beside the orange juice, their colors strangely bright in the morning light. I stared at them for a long time before taking any. The bitterness was stronger today. Metallic, sharp, it clung to the back of my throat like guilt. I heard shouting not long after. A crash, then the sound of footsteps pounding down the hall. The air thickened with the kind of tension that precedes breaking. Lucas. Claire's voice. Angry, breathless. What now? His reply came sharp, unguarded. You're altering his medication. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not blind. I saw the bottles. The labels don't match the prescriptions. A pause. Then Lucas's tone dropped lower, steady, deliberate, the way a man speaks when he's balancing a lie. You don't understand what's happening. The doctor said we could adjust the dosage for comfort. That's not what you're doing, and you know it. It's better this way, he snapped. He's in pain, Claire. I'm helping him. Helping him die faster? The words hit me like a blade. I wanted to move, to shout, to end it before it went too far, but my body refused to obey. All I could do was listen as their voices bled through the walls. You're killing him, she said. I'm saving him from suffering. Someone has to make the hard choice, and you never could. Then came the sound of glass breaking, a cry, the slam of a door. Moments later, Sophie burst into my room, pale and shaking. Dad, there. I raised a hand. I heard. She stood there, tears in her eyes. What do we do? Nothing, I said. Let them face themselves. But my calm was a lie. Beneath it, fear was building, not for myself, but for what this house was turning them into. Minutes later, Claire came in, her breathing ragged, a streak of red on her wrist where glass had caught her. He's gone too far, she said. You have to stop him. Sit down, I told her. Let me see that. She ignored the wound. He's been poisoning you, Dad. Slowly, just enough to make it look natural. Her voice broke, and I felt something inside me twist. I had known this suspicion would surface eventually, but hearing it aloud made it unbearable. You think your brother wants me dead? I asked softly. I know it, she said. He thinks if you're gone, he can fix everything before the will is read. Her words struck deep, not because of their content, but because she believed them. And perhaps she wasn't wrong. I closed my eyes. Claire, listen to me. Lucas isn't evil. He's desperate. Desperation makes people dangerous. I don't care what it makes him, she said. I'm calling the doctor. You're not taking anything else until we know what's in it. Before I could answer, the door burst open. Lucas stood there, rain-soaked, eyes blazing. You think you can accuse me and then run to him? Get out, she hissed. Not until you stop spreading lies. Then stop making them true. He turned to me, his voice trembling with restrained fury. Dad, you have to tell her I've done nothing wrong. I looked at him, at the son who once climbed these cliffs with a fearless grin, who used to sit by the fire asking questions about the world. Somewhere between ambition and fear, that boy had vanished. Lucas, I said quietly, if there's something you've done, tell me now. He stared at me, defiant, wounded, and proud all at once. Everything I've done has been for this family. Then, as if fate were waiting for the right moment, the world shifted. My chest tightened, my breath caught. Pain exploded through me, sharp, sudden, merciless. Sophie screamed. Claire rushed to my side. Lucas froze. The room tilted, colors bleeding into one another. Somewhere, someone called for an ambulance, but all I could hear was the ocean hammering against the rocks. I remember the ceiling light flickering, the voices blurring together, Claire shouting orders, Lucas insisting it wasn't his fault, Sophie sobbing in the corner. And through the haze, one thought cut clear. This was the moment everything would reveal itself. Truth always follows fear. When the paramedics lifted me, I caught a glimpse of Lucas's face, pale, wet, desperate, and Claire's, tear-streaked but unyielding. Brother and sister, both broken by love and greed, both believing they were right. As the sirens wailed and the ocean house faded behind me, I realized the illusion of control was gone. I had built my life on the belief that I could shape fate with logic and discipline. But fate doesn't negotiate. It waits, patient as the tide, and takes everything when the time comes. When I woke, the world was made of white and whispers. Machines hummed softly beside my bed, their lights pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The sharp, sterile smell of disinfectant filled my lungs. For a moment, I thought I was already dead, that this blank place was the edge between worlds. Then I heard a familiar voice. Claire's. Dad. Her hand was on mine, warm and trembling. I opened my eyes slowly, and the hospital room came into focus, the pale curtains, the rain outside, the ocean faintly audible even here. I had survived. Barely. She exhaled with relief. You're awake. You scared us. Us. My voice was a dry whisper. She looked down. Sophie's at the house. Lucas isn't allowed to handle your medication anymore. I studied her face, exhaustion etched into every line, but beneath it, a fierce calm. She had taken control of everything. I should have felt anger or pride. Instead, I felt only the heavy weight of inevitability. The doctor came and then, a middle-aged man with weary eyes. He checked the monitors, nodded to himself, and said, "You had a bad reaction to one of your pills. It's a good thing your daughter noticed in time." Claire's hand tightened around mine. It wasn't an accident, was it? The doctor hesitated. We can't say for sure. After he left, she sat beside me again. He's pretending nothing happened, she said. He told Sophie, I'm making everything worse. I closed my eyes. Maybe he believes that. She was silent for a moment, then whispered, I wish you'd never written that letter. I turned my head toward her. You found it then? Yes. I wasn't looking for it, I swear. But I read enough to understand. Do you? She nodded, then shook her head. You want to leave everything to a charity, to strangers, to wipe away your guilt. My guilt. Her voice cracked. You're punishing us for wanting something that was already ours. The words stung because they were half true. I had wanted to test them, to see whether love could survive without reward. But now, looking at her, I wondered if my experiment had gone too far. Perhaps it had never been a test of them, but of myself. The next day, I asked for Claire to come alone. Sophie had gone to bring clothes from the house, and the nurses had taken pity on me, leaving the curtains open so I could see the sea again. The waves crashed against the cliffs beyond the hospital, gray and wild. It felt fitting, a view of the world as it really was, beautiful, violent, and indifferent. When she entered, I said softly, close the door. She did. What is it? I need you to listen, and promise me something. She nodded, wary. I know about Lucas, I began. I've known for weeks. The altered doses, the rationalizations, the whispers in the dark. I let it happen. Her eyes widened. You knew. Yes. Why didn't you stop him? Because I wanted to see who he would become when no one was watching. She stared at me in disbelief. You let him poison you to test him? To test all of you, I said. My voice trembled, but not from weakness. To see if any of you still had compassion left. I built this family on control and ambition. Maybe this was my way of undoing it, or punishing myself for what I made you. She sank into the chair beside me, shaking her head. That's insane. Maybe, I admitted. But I needed to know. For a long time, there was only the sound of rain against the window. Finally, she asked, "And what did you find out?" "That compassion isn't dead," I said. "It's just buried under too much fear." She wiped her eyes quickly, angry that I'd seen her cry. "What do you want me to do now?" I reached for the envelope on the bedside table, one I'd asked the nurse to bring for my coat. It was sealed, thick with folded pages. I handed it to her. "Don't open it here," I said. "And don't show it to anyone until the time comes." "What is it?" "My confession. My last request." "Dad, promise me." She hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." I studied her face, the mix of strength and tenderness that had always reminded me of her mother. "You were the one I worried least about," I said. "And yet the one I hurt most." She looked away. "You should rest. I'm running out of time to do anything else." After she left, I stared at the rain sliding down the glass, thinking of all the things I had built and broken. The house by the sea. The children who had grown into reflections of my best and worst parts. The wife I had loved but never fully understood. Maybe the ocean had always known this ending. It has a way of swallowing secrets, of erasing what doesn't belong. Later that night, as the morphine dulled the edges of my thoughts, I heard the door creak open again. A figure moved through the darkness, silent, hesitant. For a moment, I thought it was Claire. But the scent that reached me was different, cologne and smoke. Lucas. He stood by the bed, staring down at me. In the dim light, his face looked older, worn. "You think I wanted this?" he whispered. "You think I wanted any of it?" I didn't answer. "I was trying to make it easier," he said. "For you. For all of us." "I know," I murmured. He froze, startled. "You know?" "Yes." And for the first time in months, I saw something human in his eyes. Not greed. Not calculation. Just guilt, raw and devastating. He turned away, shaking his head. "You always were one step ahead, weren't you?" "No," I said softly. "Just old enough to know that mercy and murder often start with the same intention." He left without another word. When the door closed, I felt the final act begin. The truth was out now, like a wound that could no longer be hidden. All that remained was to see who would survive it. Outside, the sea kept its rhythm, eternal, indifferent, erasing our names with every wave. I had been home for only 3 days when I realized the storm hadn't passed. It had simply changed shape. The doctors called me stable, but I knew better. My strength was a performance now, a trick of willpower and old pride. Every step was a negotiation with gravity. Every breath, a reminder that time had grown teeth. The ocean house looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. Silence had replaced warmth. Sophie moved about like a ghost, speaking softly, cleaning endlessly, trying to pretend that if the house gleamed enough, the memories would behave. Claire spent her time near me, reading, watching, protecting. Lucas, he had retreated into himself. But I could feel him still, the way a sailor feels the pull of the undertow before the water moves. On the third evening, I woke to the sound of drawers opening. Footsteps. Then the creak of my door. I didn't move. Years of fatherhood had taught me the art of pretending sleep. The faint glow from the hallway spilled into the room, and in it I saw him, Lucas, his face tense, his movements deliberate. He went straight to the small desk near the window, the drawer where I kept my papers, the one that now held the sealed envelope I'd given to Claire, or rather, where it had been. I knew at once what he was searching for. He found it in less than a minute. I heard the rustle of the envelope being torn open, the whisper of pages unfolding. My heartbeat filled my ears. He read silently at first. Then his breathing quickened. The paper trembled in his hands. I could see the exact moment the truth struck him. His body stiffened. His face drained of color. Everything, every cent, every property, every share, all of it was to go to the foundation, to the orphans, the strangers, the forgotten. And my children, my blood, were left with only the ocean house. He stood there, motionless for a moment, then crushed the papers in his fist. His voice came out a harsh whisper. No, this isn't real." He turned toward me then, and for the first time in my life, I saw him, without his mask. Not the charming son, not the rational man, just the animal underneath. Desperation, pride, and terror, all twisted into one. You lied to me, he said. I opened my eyes fully. You shouldn't be here. You lied, he repeated louder now. You made me believe there was something left for us, for me. I never promised you anything. You didn't have to. He threw the papers on the floor, his voice breaking. I stayed here. I took care of you. He stopped himself, swallowed hard, then whispered, I did everything for you. You did everything for yourself, I said quietly. And you can't stand that it wasn't enough. He stepped closer, trembling. You think this is justice? Giving away our lives to a bunch of strangers. It's redemption, I said. For all of us. He stared at me for a long moment, then something inside him snapped. You don't get to decide that anymore, he said. You've done enough damage. His hand shot out, grabbing the glass of water on the bedside table. The same one I used for my pills. He hesitated, fingers tight around it. I could see the war in his eyes. The part of him that wanted to end this, and the part that couldn't. Then, suddenly, the door burst open. Lucas. Claire's voice. He froze, his body going rigid. She stood in the doorway, pale, furious, the light behind her flickering like judgment itself. I warned you, she said. I told you not to touch him. He turned to her slowly, face hollow. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, she said. You found the letter. His jaw tightened. You think this is fair? You think he's some saint, testing us like we're his little morality play. Put the glass down, she said. He didn't move. Sophie appeared behind her, drawn by the noise, her eyes wide. Please, she whispered. Lucas, stop. And for a moment, a single fragile heartbeat. I thought he might. But instead, he laughed. A soft, broken sound. You all think I'm the monster, he said. Maybe I am. But he made me this way. He turned back to me. You made all of us this way. His hand trembled. The glass slipped from his grip and shattered on the floor. Claire rushed forward, snatching the crumpled papers from his hand. She looked down, scanning the pages, her face pale but resolute. It's true, she said softly. The foundation. The will. Sophie began to cry. Dad, is it real? I nodded. It's real. Lucas sank into the chair by the window, staring at nothing. You've destroyed everything, he murmured. Everything. No, I said, my voice weak but steady. I've freed it. The silence that followed was unbearable. Only the sea spoke, crashing endlessly against the cliffs. Claire folded the letter carefully, slipped it into her pocket, and said, This ends tonight. But it didn't. Because the next morning, the police came. Sophie had gone to them, guilt heavy in her heart, her voice trembling as she confessed everything. About the altered medication. About the will. About the night she'd heard Lucas whisper to me, It's better this way. When they took him away, Lucas didn't struggle. He just looked at me once, not with hatred, but with something worse. Understanding. He had seen the truth at last, that the line between justice and cruelty is thin enough to drown in. As the car disappeared down the wet road, I felt the weight of what I'd done settle into my chest. The house stood silent behind me, the ocean before me, and in between, the ruins of a family I had loved too harshly. The house has grown quiet again, too quiet, the kind that follows confession and punishment, the kind that settles into the bones. I can hear the ocean through the cracked window, the tide dragging the stones below, as though trying to erase everything that ever happened here. Lucas is gone. Sophie told me he didn't resist when the police came, that he stood in the doorway like a man already half vanished. I haven't seen him since. The silence he left behind is almost a relief, though I can still feel his shadow in the corners of the room. Claire won't speak his name. Sophie whispers it in her sleep. And I, God help me, still love him. The lawyer came today. Richard Hale, a gray man with gray words. His briefcase clicked open like a coffin lid, and with it came the rustle of papers that would finally settle everything. He sat at the table in the parlor, flanked by my daughters. The sea wind rattled the windows, and the scent of rain crept in like memory. Mr. Maddox, he said, adjusting his glasses. "Are you sure you're well enough for this?" "Well enough to end it," I said. He nodded and began to read. His voice was measured, almost gentle, though every syllable carried the weight of judgment. "This is the last will and testament of Henry James Maddox," he read. "To my children, Claire, Lucas, and Sophie, I leave the family home known as the Ocean House and the remainder of its contents. The rest of my estate, including all financial assets, business holdings, and properties, shall be transferred in full to the Maddox Foundation, a charitable institution established in memory of my late wife, Eleanor Maddox." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Sophie's breath caught first. "A foundation?" she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "Your mother's dream, though she never called it that." Claire sat, perfectly still. Her fingers dug into the arms of her chair, her face unreadable. The only movement was the rise and fall of her chest, slow, deliberate. When Hale finished reading, the silence that followed was unbearable. Only the sound of the sea filled the room. "So that's it," Claire said finally. "Everything goes to strangers." "Not strangers," I corrected. "Children who have no one." Her voice cracked. "And what about us? Don't we count?" "You have each other," I said. "And you have this house. That's more than most." She laughed then, not cruelly, but helplessly, the kind of laugh that breaks before it begins. "You really think this is redemption, don't you?" "It's not redemption," I said. "It's atonement." Sophie reached for my hand. "Dad, we could have helped. You didn't have to shut us out." "I needed to know what kind of people you were," I said. My voice trembled, not from weakness, but from truth. I needed to know if I'd raise survivors or scavengers. Claire stood abruptly. "You tested us like lab rats," she said. "You made us fight, accuse, destroy each other. And for what? To see if we'd still love you afterward." Her words struck harder than she knew. "I didn't want you to love me," I said quietly. "I wanted you to understand me." For a moment, her fury faltered. Then she turned away, staring out the window at the restless gray sea. "You've turned your grief into cruelty." "Maybe," I admitted. "But cruelty is all I ever learned how to survive." When she left the room, Sophie stayed behind. She didn't speak at first, just sat there, her small hand still resting on mine. The warmth of it almost hurt. "I'll help with the foundation," she said finally. I looked at her, startled. "You don't have to." "I want to. For Mom." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. And in that moment, I saw something pure, not ambition, not duty, just love. The kind that expects nothing in return. Hale gathered his papers, cleared his throat. "It's all in order then. I'll file the documents tomorrow." After he left, the house felt even larger, emptier. The sea light flickered through the windows like a ghost's pulse. I lay back in my chair, exhaustion washing over me, and closed my eyes. I thought of Eleanor, the way she used to stand on this very terrace, her hair caught in the wind, laughing as the spray of salt water kissed her face. She had believed in kindness, even when the world didn't deserve it. I had spent a lifetime chasing her faith, failing at every turn. This foundation, this gift, was the only way I could come close. But it came at a price. Later, I heard Claire return. Her footsteps were soft now, slower. She stood in the doorway for a long time before speaking. "I'm angry," she said, "but I understand." "That's all I ever wanted," I whispered. Her eyes glistened. "You should rest." "I will," I said. "Soon." She kissed my forehead, a gesture so gentle it felt like forgiveness. Then she left me alone with the sound of the ocean. The tide was rising again, its rhythm steady and final. I felt its pull deep in my chest, the same pull that had always drawn me toward truth, toward consequence, toward peace. And as sleep came, I thought I heard Eleanor's voice in the wind, whispering through the cracks of the old house, soft and endless. I woke to the sound of the sea. "You can rest now, that Henry. Deep, steady rhythm will remember, like a heart too big to belong to one man." The curtains billowed inward with the breeze, bringing with it the scent of salt and memory. Morning light crept across the room, painting everything gold. For the first time in months, I didn't feel pain, only stillness. The house was quiet. I could tell the others were gone. Sophie likely at the foundation, Claire at the market or walking along the cliffs. Even in her absence, I could feel her energy here, like the warmth left behind after someone leaves a room. Lucas's presence, though, had vanished completely. The police had taken him. Yes, but what they couldn't take was the ache he left behind. It hung in the air, invisible and heavy. I sat up slowly, my body light, but my thoughts thick. The letter was gone now, the will read, my decisions made. There was nothing left to hide behind. Only consequence, pure and unvarnished. The ocean shimmered through the window. I watched the waves crash against the rocks, each one dissolving into white foam. It struck me then how much the sea resembled memory, beautiful, relentless, and utterly indifferent to who it drowned. The door creaked open softly. Claire stepped in, carrying a tray of tea. Her face looked different, calmer somehow, but older too. "You're awake," she said. "I didn't want to wake you." "I wasn't sleeping," I said. "Just listening." She set the tray down and sat beside me. "To the ocean? To everything." She smiled faintly, pouring the tea. "Sophie called this morning. She said the first group of children arrived at the foundation. They've named one of the wings after Mom." I closed my eyes. "Eleanor would have liked that. She would have been proud," Claire said quietly. "And maybe a little angry at you." I chuckled weakly. She was often both. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore, it felt earned. Like the pause at the end of a long confession. I looked around the room, at the faded wallpaper, the old photographs, the salt stains on the window frame. The ocean house had survived everything. The storms, the grief, the lies. Somehow, it still stood. "Do you regret it?" Claire asked suddenly. "The will. The foundation. All of it." I thought about it for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "But I regret that it took me this long to learn what mattered." Her gaze softened. "What did matter?" "Not control," I said. "Not legacy. Just mercy. It's the hardest thing to give, especially to yourself." She reached for my hand, her touch firm and warm. "Then maybe it's time you give it." I smiled faintly. "Maybe." Outside, gulls wheeled over the cliffs. The sun climbed higher, scattering light across the waves. For the first time in years, the sea looked gentle, as if it too had tired of its own violence. I could feel its pull, that ancient rhythm calling me back, reminding me of everything I'd built and broken. The sound was no longer a warning. It was a lullaby. Claire helped me stand and guided me toward the terrace. The air was cool, the kind that fills your lungs with clarity. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the endless horizon. Below, the water sparkled, moving in slow, deliberate breaths. From here, the world seemed simple again. A beginning and an end, joined by motion. Sophie arrived not long after, her car tires crunching on the gravel. She ran up the steps, flushed with wind and sunlight. "They loved it," she said breathlessly. "The children, they kept asking who built the place. I told them it was you and Mom." "Your mother built it," I said softly. "I only gave her the tools." She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They want to meet you when you're strong enough." I didn't answer. Instead, I looked at both of them, my daughters, standing side by side. Two fragments of the same truth. The house behind them glowed in the morning light, windows open, curtains fluttering like wings. "I think I'll stay out here for a while," I said. Claire hesitated. "Do you want us to?" "No," I said gently. "Go inside. I just need a moment." They obeyed, though I could feel their worry even as they walked away. I waited until their footsteps faded, then turned back to the sea. The wind touched my face, cool and soft, carrying the faintest echo of Eleanor's laughter. I thought of her then, of the day we moved into this house, of her promise that the ocean would always remind us to forgive. For years, I mistook that for weakness. Now I understood. Forgiveness wasn't surrender, it was release. The waves below shimmered brighter, the sound swelling and falling, a final rhythm that matched my heart. I closed my eyes and let the air fill me, salt, light memory. I didn't fight it this time. I simply let it be. When I opened them again, the house seemed distant, its windows catching the sun like open eyes. For the first time, it didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. I sat back, breath slowing, the sea blurring into sky. I whispered her name, Eleanor, and the wind carried it away, out over the cliffs, into the endless blue. If peace had a sound, it would be this: the ocean breathing, the house standing, and nothing left unsaid.